It was a rainy afternoon in a quiet Pennsylvania suburb when 17-year-old Tyler Reynolds sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor of his late grandfather's study, going through a dusty wooden box filled with old coins and tokens. His grandfather, a retired war veteran and lifelong collector, had passed away the previous winter, leaving behind hundreds of books, medals, maps, and collectibles, none of which seemed particularly valuable, until Tyler stumbled upon a small, unassuming nickel wrapped in yellowed tissue paper at the very bottom of the box that didn't look like much at first. Just a regular 5-cent piece with Thomas Jefferson's profile facing left, and the year 2000 stamped beneath. But something about it made Tyler pause. The P mint mark below the year was slightly more prominent than usual, and when he tilted the coin under the desk lamp, the luster shimmered in a way that was subtly different from the other nickels he'd handled. The fields of the coin, the flat areas, seemed unusually smooth, and the rim was slightly broader than the nickels in his change jar that he placed the coin next to a 2000p nickel from his wallet. The differences were slight but unmistakable. Tyler, who'd grown up watching his grandfather flip through coin books and reference guides, knew enough to suspect this coin might be special. He took a few photos and posted them to a small online numismatics forum with a simple caption: "Is this 2000p nickel anything out of the ordinary?" Within hours, the thread lit up with responses. Some users brushed it off. "Looks like a regular strike," one said. But others, the more seasoned collectors, were intrigued. They noticed the slightly shifted profile alignment, the boldness of the mint mark, and most interestingly, the possibility of a double die obverse, a rare minting error that can dramatically increase a coin's value. One user, going by the name MintHunter74, dropped a bombshell: "You might have one of the lost experimental alloys from the 1999 to 2000 transition. These are believed to have been part of an unreleased test batch. Only rumors exist about these coins. If that's what this is, you're sitting on history." That's when everything changed. Tyler was flooded with private messages from coin experts and collectors across the country. A retired U.S. Mint employee even reached out anonymously, saying that in 1999, as the Mint was preparing for the redesign of several coins in the early 2000s, a limited batch of experimental Jefferson Nickels were struck with a new alloy blend intended to improve durability and reduce long-term wear. These test coins were supposedly never meant for circulation and were said to have been destroyed shortly after testing, except for a persistent rumor that a handful escaped destruction, possibly pocketed or misplaced by mistake during internal testing. None had ever surfaced publicly. Until now, Tyler was advised to send the coin to PCGS, one of the world's leading coin grading services, for professional authentication and grading. After careful handling and secure delivery, the coin was examined under extreme magnification, metallurgy analysis, and strike comparison. The result: confirmation that the coin was indeed struck with a non-standard nickel-copper alloy. It exhibited characteristics found in no known circulation strike from that year. In essence, it was an undisclosed mint experimental issue, the kind of discovery that numismatists dream about, and it was the only one known to exist. With that news, the value of the coin exploded overnight. Auction houses began contacting Tyler and his family with increasingly aggressive offers. The most prestigious numismatic auction in the country, the Liberty Rarities Auction House, proposed a headline sale: the one-of-a-kind 2000p Jefferson experimental nickel. They estimated its value could exceed that of the famed 1913 Liberty Head nickel, which sold for over $4 million. But this was different. This wasn't just a known rarity. This was a modern myth made real, a coin that wasn't supposed to exist, a relic of internal mint experimentation that had somehow slipped into the world and survived unnoticed for 2.5 decades. The auction was set for a warm August night in New York City. Bidders flew in from Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia. Wealthy collectors, investors, and museums watched closely. The bidding began conservatively at $1 million. Within minutes, it leapt past $10 million. By the 30-minute mark, it had surpassed $100 million, and then, silence. The room held its breath as a mystery bidder on the phone raised the bid to an unfathomable $260 million. The hammer fell. Gasps erupted across the room. Tyler, now seated beside representatives from PCGS and the auction house, could hardly process what had happened. In less than 8 months, his quiet discovery in his grandfather's dusty study had become the most valuable modern coin transaction in history. The buyer was never revealed publicly. Some suspected it was a tech billionaire, others said it was a royal family from the Gulf states. The coin was flown under armed escort to a private vault, and only once since has it been displayed, under glass, flanked by guards, at a rare coin exhibition in Tokyo. For Tyler, life changed overnight. But he never let it go to his head. He used a portion of the proceeds to establish the Reynolds Coin Education Foundation, a nonprofit aimed at promoting historical literacy and collecting knowledge among young students in public schools. He also funded the digital preservation of several mint archives and donated to museums dedicated to American history and culture. The story of the $260 million Jefferson Nickel became the subject of a best-selling book, a multi-part docuseries, and endless debate among historians and skeptics. Some still question how the coin made it out of the mint. Was it truly lost by mistake? Was there an inside job? Or had Tyler's grandfather, who served overseas in a government role during the early 2000s, played a role in preserving a piece of history no one was meant to see? No one may ever know for certain, but what's undeniable is the legacy. The 2000 Jefferson Nickel shattered every assumption about modern coins. It reminded people that value isn't just about gold or age or rarity alone, it's about mystery, story, and the way history intersects with ordinary lives in extraordinary ways. Ever since, collectors around the world have searched tirelessly through rolls of 2000 nickels, holding their breath for a shimmer, a shift, a sign. Coin shops and banks have reported a strange increase in demand for nickels of that specific year. New grading companies have been founded with the dream of discovering the next hidden anomaly. But nothing has ever come close, because sometimes, in the vast sea of circulating currency, there's only one treasure, and just like that, a coin once worth 5 cents became a cornerstone of American folklore. If you're fascinated by stories like these and want to stay up to date with more incredible discoveries, deep dives into rare coins, and the hidden secrets of everyday currency, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You never know, your next great treasure might be sitting right there in your pocket. Next, 1993 5-cent Jefferson Nickels USA coins. Today James sat in his dimly lit apartment, staring at the space where the coin had once rested. The spot felt empty now, not just physically, but spiritually. That nickel had changed everything. It had woken something in him, an insatiable hunger to understand not just the value of rare coins, but the silent, invisible stories they carried across decades and generations. That he found himself lost in archives, ordering books on numismatics, scrolling through mint reports from the 90s, digging into congressional records. The more he read, the more tangled the story became. The Jefferson Nickel wasn't just a product of minting anomalies. There were whispers, hushed voices in closed forums, about a rogue mint employee who had discovered the error and secretly released a few into circulation before abruptly resigning. No charges were ever filed, and the mint dismissed it as conspiracy talk. But multiple sightings of the employee, later living quietly in a secluded cabin in Montana, added to the myth. James couldn't let it go. He flew to Philadelphia, visited the U.S. Mint. He stood outside, staring at the building like it was a cathedral of secrets. He wasn't allowed inside the core areas, of course, but he walked its perimeter, feeling the weight of what was created inside. Millions of coins passed through this facility daily. How many were considered mistakes? How many held unseen stories? One evening, he met an older man in a tiny coin shop tucked away near Market Street. The man, Chester Duval, was a former mint technician. He walked with a limp, his hands worn and stained from decades of metalwork. When James mentioned the 1993 Jefferson Nickel, Chester didn't react immediately. But after a pause, he said something that froze the air between them. There were only 4. James leaned in. For what? 4 coins. Minted with the error. We were short-staffed. Management was rushing us like crazy back then. I caught it. I know I did. The misalignment in the die, the pressure differences. I marked it in the ledger. But before I could pull the coins, they were gone. James's heartbeat quickened. Gone how? Dispatched. Just like that. We didn't have digital tagging like we do now. Someone pushed it through. Maybe someone upstairs. Maybe just dumb luck. James pressed further. What happened to the ledger? Destroyed. After the 1994 reorganization. A lot of stuff got accidentally purged. People thought we were covering something up. Maybe we were. Chester's voice carried the weight of unresolved guilt. Before James could ask more, Chester stood, reached into a dusty drawer behind the counter, and handed him a worn folder. Inside were photos. Old, grainy, but detailed enough to show the coin's subtle differences, a barely perceptible double strike on the Monticello inscription, a die crack near the left cheek of Jefferson's profile, and a curious halo effect from the metallic inconsistency. James asked if he could keep the photos. Chester nodded, then added, "Be careful who you talk to about this coin. It's not just a collector's item anymore. It's a myth, a symbol, and to some, an obsession." Back in his hotel, James began piecing together the timeline. If Chester was right, and 4 were minted, with 1 lost in shipping, 1 sold in Switzerland, and is now sold to a mysterious collector, there was still 1 unaccounted for. 1 coin. Out there somewhere. Hiding in a coffee can, a change jar, a sock drawer. Maybe it had been spent on a candy bar, maybe thrown in a fountain. Or maybe, someone else already knew what they had done. He decided he wasn't done. He set up a website, an anonymous page dedicated to the 1993 Jefferson Nickel. On it, he published details of the rare minting anomaly, told the story of the coins, the possible value, and how to spot one. He left out the part about the final 4th coin, keeping that detail to himself. Then he waited. Weeks passed. Emails trickled in. Most were hoaxes, people sending blurry pictures of ordinary nickels. But then came one from a woman in Michigan. She had inherited a coin collection from her grandfather, a World War II vet and coin hobbyist. She included high-res photos. James zoomed in, breathless. There it was. The cheek crack. The halo. The strike flaw on Monticello. He flew out to meet her. The woman, Karen, lived in a small farmhouse on the edge of town. She was skeptical at first, but kind. When he finally saw the coin in person, his hands trembled. It was identical to the one he had owned. The weight, the color, the feel. It wasn't a duplicate, it was the 4th. The missing piece of a $290 million puzzle. Karen had no idea of its value. When he explained, she nearly fainted. Her eyes welled up. That coin had been sitting in a drawer for nearly 20 years, right next to her father's medals and an old Navy ID. She'd almost sold the collection for $50 to a pawn shop. They decided to partner. Together, they contacted an elite appraisal service, followed by a private collector based in Monaco. This buyer had already acquired one of the other rare nickels. When he confirmed its authenticity, he made an offer James and Karen couldn't refuse, $312 million. Karen used her share to restore the farmhouse, fund local veterans programs, and start a scholarship in her grandfather's name. James quietly vanished from the public eye once more. But this time, he wasn't just chasing nickels. He was hunting legends. That he started traveling the world, seeking out obscure minting errors, forgotten patterns, hidden treasures in plain sight. He once found a rare Roman denarius buried in the sand at a forgotten beach in Cyprus. Another time, he tracked down a missing 1933 double eagle in a private estate in Argentina. Each coin, each discovery, was a chapter in a story no one else even knew existed. That he never returned to his old life. He didn't need to. The coin had changed him. Not just by filling his bank account, but by rewriting the way he saw the world. In every pocket of change, he now saw possibility. In every old drawer, a chance at history. One night, years later, he posted again to the website he had started. This time, he wrote just one line: "There's always something out there worth more than you think. Look closer." So if you're still reading, still wondering whether these stories are just modern legends or real-life treasure hunts, maybe it's time to look at your own change a little differently. Because somewhere, someone is holding on to a fortune without knowing it. Somewhere, a 5-cent coin is worth more than entire empires. And maybe, just maybe, the next incredible story starts in your pocket. That if you enjoyed this unbelievable true story and want more like it, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because history hides in the smallest things, and the next legend could be sitting right in front of you. Next, 1954 5-cent Jefferson Nickels USA coins. Today, the quiet suburbs of rural Indiana, tucked away in a dust-covered attic, an elderly man named Carl Whitmore was sifting through the forgotten remnants of his youth. He had lived a quiet life, never rich, never famous, just a man with simple tastes and an enduring fascination for coins. Carl had started collecting when he was only 10 years old, after his grandfather handed him a worn coin and told him, one day, this might be worth more than you'll ever imagine. That moment stuck with him, even though decades passed, and most of his collection remained common, unimpressive, and of sentimental value more than monetary. But that evening, while shifting through a tin box of coins wrapped in brittle newspaper from the 60s, Carl's hand paused on a particular nickel. It looked ordinary at first glance, just another Jefferson nickel, the kind that had passed through countless American hands since the 1940s. Yet something about this one was different. The shine. The weight. The precision of the strike. Turning it over slowly, Carl read the date, 1954. He wasn't a numismatist by profession, but he knew enough to recognize that this one might warrant a second look. He brought the coin to the small magnifier he'd kept in a drawer since the 90s, blowing off dust with trembling breath. The details were extraordinary. The steps of Monticello, Jefferson's home depicted on the reverse side, were sharply defined, something that was rare in most nickels from that year. Even the S mint mark near the Monticello dome, indicating the San Francisco Mint, stood boldly as if it had just been struck. Carl's heart picked up pace. He didn't sleep that night. He stayed up researching, comparing images online, cross-checking serial mint details, and reading through forums and collector databases. What he had, he slowly realized, wasn't just any 1954 nickel. It was a proof strike. More than that, it matched the description of a long-lost rare variety that experts had speculated about for decades but had never verified. Until now, the Jefferson nickel had always been a staple of American pocket change. It wasn't flashy, like a silver dollar or a gold eagle, but it had history. Designed by Felix Schlag, the coin had seen the evolution of America through wars, prosperity, and turbulence. The 1954 issue wasn't particularly famous, but in small circles of collectors, there were whispered tales of a special run. A batch of ultra-rare proof nickels that were supposedly minted under unusual conditions, pristine blanks, extra sharp dies, a mysterious halt to production shortly afterward. Only a few were believed to have been made, most of which were never released into circulation. Carl couldn't risk just trusting internet gossip. He took the coin to an appraisal event 2 states away, holding it in a cloth-lined case the entire way, his fingers trembling with anticipation and doubt. He stood in line for 3 hours before finally stepping in front of an appraiser from one of the most reputable numismatic organizations in the country. The man barely glanced at Carl before asking, "What have you got for me today?" Carl gently placed the nickel on the velvet mat. The man picked it up, looked through his loupe, then paused. He didn't speak for a full minute. His brow furrowed. His fingers turned the coin over, again and again. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his tone suddenly different, more serious, a touch incredulous. Carl explained, briefly. The appraiser waved over a colleague. Then another. What had started as a routine coin examination had turned into a small crowd of experts muttering and analyzing with the sort of intensity Carl had only seen in courtroom dramas. What they eventually told him felt surreal. The coin was genuine. Beyond that, it was extraordinary. A 1954 S. Jefferson nickel, part of an extremely limited proof set, struck on a planchet originally meant for a foreign silver coin, an error that had likely gone unnoticed at the time. Because of the silver content, the coin's coloration was slightly off, and the weight was minutely different from standard nickels, just enough to go unnoticed by casual observers but obvious under magnification. More shocking still, it was the only known coin of its kind in existence. A one-of-one word got out. The numismatic world was in uproar. Blogs, magazines, forums, everyone was talking about Carl's nickel. Auction houses began to make offers, some tentative, others aggressive. One major house, based in New York, estimated the coin could fetch upwards of $310 million at auction, not just for its rarity, but for its perfect condition and the mystery behind its origin. That valuation alone broke every known record for a 5-cent coin that it was unprecedented. A nickel, just 5 cents, suddenly became one of the most valuable coins in history, on par with some of the rarest gold and silver pieces ever found. The irony didn't escape Carl. All his life, he'd struggled to make ends meet, clipped coupons, worked double shifts. And all the while, a small fortune had been sitting in his attic, wrapped in old newspaper. Reporters came. Historians. Television crews. Carl found himself on the evening news, trying to explain how a coin he'd forgotten about had become more valuable than most homes, cars, and even businesses. But he never bragged. He remained humble, even as his story inspired thousands of others to check their own old collections. Offers flooded in from museums, collectors, and even private investors. One tech billionaire offered to buy the coin for a record price and promised to display it in a public exhibit so the world could see it. Carl hesitated, unsure if he could let go of the thing that had suddenly given his quiet life so much noise and meaning. Eventually, he agreed to sell, but under one condition: that the coin would be used to promote history and inspire curiosity in young collectors. A foundation was created in his name, with proceeds going to scholarships, coin education programs, and financial literacy workshops for underprivileged kids. The coin, now dubbed the Whitmore nickel, was displayed at the Smithsonian, surrounded by exhibits about mid-century American minting and the extraordinary story of how chance, patience, and a love for history brought a simple man into the spotlight. Carl lived out the rest of his years quietly, with a bit more comfort but the same humble demeanor. His story became a legend among collectors, a modern-day treasure tale proving that value isn't always in gold and glitter, but sometimes in the most overlooked corners of our lives. So if you ever find yourself holding a simple nickel, don't just pass it off as pocket change. Look closely. You never know what story it holds, and hey, if you enjoyed this incredible true tale and want more amazing coin discoveries and historical deep dives, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with fellow collectors. You might just help someone uncover their own $1 million nickel.